Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be exploring something that sounds kind of philosophical, but we're going to bring it down to earth.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be talking about transcendence,
Okay.
but we're not talking about mystical experiences. We're talking about how this concept plays out in everyday life.
That's cool.
So we've got a few sources lined up today.
Okay.
We'll be starting with the classic Oxford English Dictionary definition to ground ourselves.
All right.
And then we'll dive into a source that explores how transcendence shows up in your daily routine.
Okay.
And finally, we'll broaden our perspective to look at the human search for meaning through some pretty interesting philosophical lenses.
Time to say it.
Yeah, me too. It's fascinating how this word transcendence might kind of evoke these images of monks on mountaintops.
Right.
But as we'll see, it's way more accessible than that.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics. The Oxford English Dictionary defines transcendent as something that goes beyond normal limits or boundaries because of its significance.
Right.
And this definition already kind of hints that even the seemingly ordinary, the everyday, can become extraordinary.
Yeah. What's intriguing about that definition is that it sets the stage for understanding how something seemingly ordinary can become transcendent.
Right.
It's not necessarily about the activity itself, but the meaning that we bring to it.
That's a great point. And speaking of finding meaning in everyday life, one of our sources highlights 3 key pathways to everyday transcendence.
Okay.
And those are mindfulness and self-awareness, acts of kindness and compassion, and then embracing challenges and growth.
All right. I like it. Those are good.
Yeah. So let's dive into that first pathway, mindfulness.
Okay.
You know, I used to think meditation and mindfulness were kind of just these trendy buzzwords, but then I actually tried incorporating some mindfulness practices into my routine.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised by how much it helped me to manage my anxiety. So for those who might be new to this, what does mindfulness actually mean?
So mindfulness is really about being fully present in the moment. And it's a concept that actually has roots in, ancient contemplative traditions, but is now backed by modern research in fields like psychology and neuroscience.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds so simple.
Right.
But I imagine it takes a lot of practice to quiet that constant, mental chatter that's always going on.
Yeah, it does, but the benefits are definitely worth it. One of our sources highlights John Kabat-Zinn, a leading figure in mindfulness research.
Okay.
And he defines mindfulness as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. And that non-judgmentally part is really key because it's about observing our thoughts and feelings without getting kind of swept away by them.
So it's not about, emptying your mind?
No.
It's more about just noticing those thoughts without judgment.
Exactly. It's about creating a space between ourselves and our reactions, which can be incredibly freeing. Yeah.
And this ties back to the concept of transcendence really beautifully.
How so?
By becoming more mindful, we're actually able to step outside of our usual thought patterns, our reactions.
Okay.
We gain a new perspective on our experiences, which allows us to kind of transcend those limiting thought patterns.
This makes me think of that classic example that our source mentions, like savoring a cup of coffee.
Right.
Something so simple, but when we're truly present, we can find so much enjoyment in it, noticing the aroma, the warmth of the mug, the subtle flavors. It's a mini vacation for your mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can try a mini mindfulness exercise even right now as you're listening to us.
Right.
Just pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and notice the sensations of your breath. That's a taste of everyday transcendence.
It's about bringing that same level of awareness to other everyday activities as well. And the research backs this up. Mindfulness has been shown to reduce stress, improve emotional regulation, and just enhance overall well-being. That's really compelling.
Okay.
So let's move on to that second pathway, acts of kindness and compassion.
All right.
This one seems a little bit more straightforward, but how does it relate to transcendence?
Well, think about it. When we act with kindness, we're shifting our focus away from ourselves and toward the well-being of others. And in doing so, we're actually tapping into something larger than ourselves.
It's interesting because our source mentions research from positive psychology that shows that helping others can actually increase our own happiness.
Yes.
So it's not just about being selfless, it's actually beneficial for us too.
Absolutely. And it also fosters a sense of interconnectedness. We start to see ourselves as part of something larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Part of a web of relationships and shared humanity.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Our source provides some great examples of acts of kindness, both big and small. It could be like volunteering your time at a local charity, or it could be something as simple as listening attentively to a friend who's going through a hard time.
Yeah, and even small gestures like, holding the door open for someone or offering a genuine compliment.
Right.
Those can have a ripple effect.
I love that quote from the Dalai Lama that the source includes. He says, "Compassion is not a religious business, it is human business."
Yeah, it's such a great quote.
It highlights that kindness is really a universal value, accessible to everyone, regardless of their beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this circles back to transcendence. So when we act with compassion, we transcend those boundaries of our ego and connect with something more expansive, something that speaks to our shared humanity.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
All right, so let's explore that third path to everyday transcendence, embracing challenges and growth.
Okay.
This one might seem a little bit counterintuitive because, we usually think of challenges as things that we want to avoid.
Right, yeah.
But challenges, while they're difficult, can also be incredibly transformative.
That's true.
They have the potential to, push us beyond our comfort zones.
Right.
And help us discover these new strengths, resilience.
Yeah.
It's about reframing our perspective.
Yeah, I get that.
Like I remember when I first started this podcast, I was terrified of putting myself out there,
Sure.
But by facing that fear, I actually discovered a whole new side of myself.
Yeah.
And it's been an incredible journey of growth.
That's a perfect example. And it aligns with Carol Dweck's research on the growth mindset, which suggests that viewing challenges as opportunities for growth can lead to greater fulfillment. It's about seeing those setbacks as stepping stones on the path to learning and development.
If instead of seeing challenges as failures,
Yeah.
we see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Right.
Speaking of reframing perspectives, that reminds me of Viktor Frankl's work. Our source mentions him as a powerful example of finding meaning in the face of adversity.
Yeah. Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Meaning, he went through unimaginable suffering in the Holocaust. But even in that darkness, he found a way to create meaning. His message is incredibly powerful. Even in the face of adversity, we have the power to choose our attitude and find purpose.
He actually argued that suffering, when met with the right mindset, can be transformed into a source of growth.
Right.
It's about finding meaning even in the most difficult of circumstances. That's truly transcending limitations, isn't it?
It is.
It's about rising above our immediate pain and connecting with something deeper, something more enduring.
Precisely. It's a profound example of how, even in the darkest of times, we can choose to find meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
And in doing so, transcend our suffering.
This makes me think about those aha moments that we have after overcoming a challenge.
Yes.
It's like we've pushed through a barrier and come out on the other side with a new understanding of ourselves.
It's like climbing a mountain. It's tough, but the view from the top is breathtaking, and the journey makes it all worthwhile.
So far, we've been focused on these kind of individual pathways to transcendence, but now I think it's time to zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
And look at the broader human search for meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. This is where we begin to see how the concept of transcendence has been woven into the fabric of human history, philosophy. It's a timeless quest that has captivated thinkers for centuries.
Yeah.
I mean, it really feels like us humans, we're wired to search for something bigger than ourselves. You're right. It really is this fundamental driving force in human life. And it actually ties in with Abraham Maslow's famous hierarchy of needs.
Oh, right.
Remember how self-actualization sits at the very top of that pyramid?
Yeah.
It kind of suggests this idea that we have this innate desire to go beyond just, basic survival, to strive for something more.
That makes sense. But if this drive for meaning is so deeply ingrained in us, why does it feel so elusive for so many people?
That's a great question. And it's one that philosophers have really grappled with for centuries.
Right.
One perspective that our source highlights is existentialism.
Okay.
Thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, they argued that meaning isn't something we're born with. It's something that we actually create through our choices and actions.
I've always found Sartre's idea that existence precedes essence pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's like we're thrown into this world without a predetermined purpose, and then it's up to us to define who we are through what we do.
Yeah.
No pressure, right.
Exactly. And Camus, with his exploration of the absurd, kind of took it a step further. He argued that, we're searching for meaning in a universe that might be inherently meaningless.
Wow.
His conclusion.
Yeah.
We must embrace this absurdity and create our own meaning despite it.
So existentialism puts that responsibility for finding meaning squarely on our own shoulders.
Yeah.
Which can be both liberating and terrifying.
It can, yeah.
Like you said. But it's not the only perspective out there.
Yeah.
Our source also touches on nihilism, which has a bit of a reputation for being, well, pessimistic.
It definitely gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
Nihilism, as articulated by Friedrich Nietzsche, it doesn't simply say nothing matters.
Oh,
it's more nuanced than that. He challenged the very notion of inherent meaning, especially as those traditional sources of meaning like religion were losing their grip on society.
Right.
His famous declaration that God is dead.
Right.
It wasn't advocating atheism, but it was pointing out the shift.
So it's more about acknowledging that those old structures of meaning might not hold up anymore. And then what? Do we just give up on finding meaning altogether?
That's the danger. That's the danger that Nietzsche warned about. Nihilism can lead to, despair, apathy. If we're not careful. But he also saw it as a potential springboard for creating new values, which is where his concept of the Übermensch comes in.
Right.
And this isn't about, some superhuman being, but it's the individual who transcends that conventional morality and creates their own values in a world without inherent meaning.
It's a daunting task, but also kind of exciting.
It is.
Like if there's no preset path, we really have that freedom and the responsibility to kind of forge our own.
Right.
Okay, so we've got existentialism saying we're responsible for creating our own meaning. And nihilism kind of questioning whether meaning even exists in the first place. That's a lot to chew on.
It is. It really highlights the complexity of this human search for transcendence.
Yeah.
But amidst all this philosophical debate, our source also brings up something very practical.
Okay.
Seeking fulfillment through material possessions or external validation, it has its limitations.
Oh, yeah. We see that everywhere, right?
Yeah.
People chasing wealth, status, recognition, hoping it'll bring them, happiness, meaning.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, the one with the most toys still dies.
Exactly. And our source even mentions the Easterlin paradox.
Okay.
This fascinating study that suggests that once our basic needs are met, additional wealth doesn't actually make us any happier.
It's like trying to fill a bottomless pit,
Yeah.
You can keep throwing things in, but it never seems to get full. And, I've even noticed that with things like social media, likes, professional achievements, that external validation can be just as fleeting.
You've hit on a key point. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard actually warned about this. He called it the aesthetic life.
Okay.
It's a life focused on chasing pleasure and societal expectations, but it doesn't lead to true fulfillment.
So if material wealth and external validation don't lead to lasting meaning, where do we turn? Back to those mountaintop monks.
Not necessarily. Remember those pathways to everyday transcendence that we discussed earlier?
Right.
This is where they become even more crucial.
Right. Our source talks about, various practices that can help us move beyond that kind of existential doubt and connect with a deeper sense of purpose. Things like meditation, artistic expression, acts of service. These practices really help us shift our focus inward.
Yeah.
Cultivate self-awareness and connect with something larger than ourselves. And, it's interesting how different spiritual traditions also address this concept of transcendence.
Oh, absolutely. Whether it's Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, they all offer their own unique teachings and practices.
Right.
But there's this common thread of seeking connection with something beyond the material world.
It's like they're all pointing towards this understanding that true fulfillment comes from something deeper than the pursuit of fleeting pleasures or external validation.
Right.
It really is fascinating to see how this search for meaning, this desire to transcend our limitations, it runs through so many different aspects of human experience.
It's a testament to the depth and complexity of the human spirit, when you say.
It really is. It's like this deep yearning to transcend the everyday is like woven into our DNA. And you know what's so inspiring about all of this?
What's that?
Is that it doesn't require some grand mystical journey. These sources, they remind us that transcendence isn't some far-off concept reserved for, like, philosophers
Right.
or spiritual masters, you know?
Yeah.
It's something we can access in our everyday lives right here and now.
Exactly. And it all circles back to that initial definition we explored from the Oxford English Dictionary, right? Transcendence is about going beyond normal limits or boundaries. And what we've seen today is that we can do this not through these like extraordinary experiences, but through the simple everyday choices that we make.
Right.
It's about how we perceive and approach those moments.
This is what I love about diving into these topics. It's like we're given a toolkit for living a more meaningful life. And it's not about, following a strict formula. It's more about experimenting and discovering what works for you.
You've hit the nail on the head. While these sources offer, a framework, a set of ideas and practices to consider,
right?
Ultimately, the search for meaning is a deeply personal one.
Yeah.
What feels transcendent to one person might not resonate with another.
Yeah.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
So it's not about copying someone else's path, but rather about exploring these ideas and finding what genuinely resonates with you, what helps you feel more connected, more alive, more in tune with something larger than yourself.
That's the question that each of us needs to ask ourselves. It's an ongoing exploration, not a destination.
And that's a beautiful way to wrap up this deep dive into transcendence.
Yeah.
We want to leave you with this final thought-provoking question to ponder as you go about your day. What everyday experiences have felt transcendent to you? And how might you intentionally cultivate more of those experiences in your life?
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking those moments of transcendence, both big and small.
Right.
They're out there waiting to be discovered, within the fabric of your everyday life.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into transcendence. Until next time, keep diving.